Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast. My name is Tom Luongo. It is Thursday, June 22nd, 2017. I have some interesting news, or at least interesting news for me. I reached out to the editors over at Russia Insider the other day and got a reply back. And on top of all the other places that I currently write, I will be writing for them 2 or 3 times a week as well. So looking forward to that, extend the reach a little bit. And, build a bigger reputation box. So you can look for me over there. Of course, I'll cross-post all of that stuff to my blog over at tomluongo.me. And you can follow me there as well. So let's get right to it. We've got big news in the Middle East. All right. So I don't know if you guys caught the news or understand the significance of it, but you really need to understand that this is a big deal that just happened to Saudi Arabia. I have an article up on Seeking Alpha right now about this, discussing the potential ramifications for the oil markets. But let's start with the beginning. Let's start with what this actually means. So the former crown prince, 57-year-old Mohammed bin Nayef, was replaced by King Salman as both Minister of the Interior and Crown Prince on Monday evening, Tuesday morning. So or Tuesday evening, Wednesday morning. So, and he was replaced by current defense minister and leader of the Economic Council for Saudi Arabia, 31-year-old Mohammed bin Salman. Now, bin Salman is the architect of most of the Saudis' current foreign policy and most definitely of its incredible belligerence towards Iran. One could argue that all of the U.S. belligerence towards Iran since Trump was elected has been directed through the Saudis. And in effect, what we have now is I wouldn't say palace coup, but it's pretty close to that. King Salman is 81 years old. He's in poor health, and this effectively puts a U.S. satrap in charge of Saudi Arabia for the next 2 generations, barring anything else happening. So bin Salman is the architect behind the diplomatic isolation of Qatar. He's the architect behind escalating the Yemen war. The same thing in Syria, since he took over as defense minister in January 2015. And he's been trying to establish diplomatic relations with both China and Russia at a more high level than, frankly, Saudi Arabia deserves. They've been walking around the Arabian Peninsula for so long as cocks of the walk that they don't realize, because they've had the United States at their back, they don't realize that Russia and China are now the ones dictating policy in the region, despite what Donald Trump thinks. And Trump is going to come to this conclusion very quickly, or we're going to have World War III, and it's going to be bin Salman that starts it. Now, I haven't heard hide nor hair out of Trump in the last month and a half about, don't worry, there will be peace. And you know that I'm on record as saying that I thought that his trip to Saudi Arabia and Israel was designed to lay the foundation for a grand peace bargain in the Middle East. I'm not so sure of that right now, because what's happened since that meeting or that trip has been to further ratchet up tensions between the GCC and Iran, while at the same time the Americans are doubling down on policy to attempt to partition Syria off in order to allow for some form of Kurdish independence, air bases in Syria, northern Iraq, so that we can point missiles at Iran and Russia. In the same way that we want to point missiles at them from Poland, Ukraine, and originally Crimea. Let's not kid ourselves. The main reason we're angry about the Russians reunifying with Crimea is that we no longer can put a missile base there and take away their warm weather port and gain operational control of the Black Sea. That was the plan. That plan has failed. And to listen to the State Department get angry because the Russian ambassador, or undersecretary of the foreign minister, canceled a meeting on Friday to begin their working group on how to improve Russia and U.S. relations, is the height of hypocrisy. We've done nothing for the last week and a half of poke the Russians in such a way as to be completely unacceptable. And yet we're trying to play the victim card. How much of this Trump is involved with, I don't know. But if this is some kind of 4D chess grand bargain, or opening art of the deal, opening bargain thing, I got to tell you, I put up the last time a picture of Putin and the phrase "not agreement capable." The Russians are not playing around. The Chinese are not playing around. The American deep state is going to push us to the brink of World War III. I don't think there's anything Trump can do about it, even if he wanted to. Even if he's not on board with it all. Bin Salman is unhinged. There's a great article over at the Durin by Alexander Mercoris, the disastrous rise of Mohammed bin Salman. I urge you to read it. And then there's a link in that article to his position on Iran. And his position on Iran is unhinged. It sounds like it was written by the most crazed Zionist Israeli. I kid you not. I did not know that before yesterday. And this was an article that Mercuris wrote a while ago, and I just happened to miss it. Understand that the man is unhinged. His view of Iran is beyond cartoonish. And it tells me that we already know he's reckless. Now he's got the American military behind him. He's got Trump behind him. They're going to buy all these weapons that they can't afford in order to try and remake the Saudi Arabian economy with their Vision 2030 plan, which is his idea, which is nothing more than kind of classic Marxist Keynesian infrastructure rebuilding nonsense. But he has to keep oil prices high. So what's going to happen here is we're going to see continued skirmishing in order to try and keep the price of oil above $45 a barrel, which is not going to work because the supply and demand fundamentals for oil are awful. Putin will take every day that Brent crude is above $45 a barrel as a gift from the gods, while he continues to trade with the Chinese in yuan for both oil and gas. Qatar is going to get off the petrodollar standard. They're going to break their currency peg. It's going to happen. There's no reason for them to continue at this point. They've been diplomatically cut off. They've been effectively sanctioned. They're running out of dollars. They can't hold the currency peg for much longer. They're going to have to kill the peg, and they're going to have to start accepting yuan for their oil with the Chinese, who are their biggest trading partners. This is what's on the table. This is what's going to happen. I always thought that the Saudi Arabians would have to break their peg first if they wanted to survive. They're not going to. With bin Salman in power, there's no way that will happen. No way. So expect Qatar to make a major announcement in the next couple of weeks along these lines. Well, the announcement will be the Forex markets will go crazy. If not the next couple of weeks, certainly within a month. If there's not a regime change in Qatar within the next 2 or 3 weeks, I firmly expect that there will be a shift in their currency. They have the money and the reserves, if they want, to continue to defend the currency peg, but there's no reason for them to. No reason at all. Why would they buy $12 billion worth of F-16s from there, or F-18s from the United States, whatever they buy, aircraft from the United States, when they can't raise any dollars at this point? Why do that? Offer them yuan. Here you go. Go trade. We'll take. It's silly. They don't need to spend $18 billion on that to defend themselves. The Turks will do it for them. Strike a strategic alliance with Iran. Watch the world go up in flames. There are people out there who consider themselves serious geopolitical analysts who think that this dust-up between Saudi Arabia and Qatar will threaten the China One Belt, One Road initiative. These people are not serious. Pepe Escobar's latest article over at Sputnik, it's probably over at the Asia Times and a variety of other places as well, goes over the important thing, the most important thing that's happened in the last 2 weeks is the last bullet point. India and Pakistan are now members of the SCO. We now have an alliance, strategic alliance, defense alliance between India, Pakistan, and China. I'm going to repeat that one more time so that you understand what I'm just said. India, Pakistan, and China are all part of the same defense agreement. Iran is next. Pakistan is being raised up by the Chinese and the Russians to be the point men, to be an almost full partner in the Central Asian development project. Much to the consternation of the Indians, because it is only Pakistan that can help create some form of alliance agreement or de-escalation agreement with the Taliban in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan is the key to Central Asian stability, since it borders everyone: Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, everyone, Kazakhstan, all of them. Why Afghanistan is always fought over, because it's the one patch of ground that can be used as a staging area to screw up the entire Central Asian geographic area. The Taliban controls 60% of the country. Talks have already been opened up between the Russians, the Iranians, Pakistanis. They've already held high-level talks multiple times. Part of the other reason why the United States deep state is so angry. It's why Trump is considering putting more troops in there, though he said he wouldn't nation build. Geopolitical realities of the day, when he looks at the balance sheet of the United States, he realizes that he can't let the petrodollar go, which is why he has to make an arrangement with the Saudis and to try and shore up the GCC. While at the same time, they think they can't allow for any kind of economic alliance between the great powers in Asia in order to improve the world, because that would lower the market share of the oligarchy in the West. Market share, mind you, not wealth, just market share. At the end of the day, this is about market share. It's the best way to put it. Last night, Angela Merkel sent out her boy toy, Emmanuel Macron, the new leader and the new president in France, to make a statement on Syria. Don't kid yourself. This was not an independent act by Macron. This was absolutely Merkel letting everybody know that Europe is no longer interested in regime change in Syria, and that at a certain level, this also signifies probably the beginning of the end of the refugee policy in Syria, in the EU. If Macron is talking about wanting to end the war and stop the regime change operation in Syria, this is another way of saying we're tired of taking in all of these refugees. We can't help. We can't do this anymore. That policy is over. But Angela Merkel can't do that. She can't go out and look at this. She can't do this. So they'll have Macron do it because he's an empty slate. That's what this is about. It's a good sign. It's an excellent sign. It means that the EU is going, at some point, the EU is now also starting to forge its own foreign policy, exactly what Merkel threatened a couple of weeks ago. And I expect to continue to see further thawing of relations between the EU and Russia as this goes on. Now, it will only go on insofar as they can. It's not going to go that far, and don't get me wrong, because I really do believe at a certain level I do believe at a certain level that they're kind of trying to rally around the idea of Fortress Europe as the fallback plan for the globalist takeover of the world, whatever you want to call it. And whatever. I mean, I'm talking in their terms, not mine, right? I'm not sure I believe money, but this is what this is the way I think they're thinking. And at a certain level, if they do this, if they start to move towards Russia, to make overtures towards Russia to like lift sanctions and come to an agreement about the Minsk agreement, which the Minsk agreement is not enforceable. This is why any language discussing enforcement of the Minsk agreement is silly. It was never intended to be enforceable because the signatories are not talking to each other. So, but to do this in order to try and I'm thinking to sandbag Putin into making a mistake, and then they'll shut the door on him again later. But we'll see. I don't know. It's either that or at a certain level, Angela Merkel understands that, and the EU in leadership in Brussels understands that without the United States actively supporting them anymore, which again I'm not really even sure I believe any of this, their natural path is towards Russia. So we'll see. All right. So that's interesting. And then the last thing to talk about is that I've been banging on in these podcasts about cryptocurrencies and how it's important that you start getting yourself exposed to them and start learning how to get yourself into the community and what would you have to do and all of the things and the steps that you have to take. And then we had a moment yesterday where Ethereum had a major flash crash and dropped like by 95% in like 5 minutes or something like that. It immediately moved right back up again. Part of this is this is going to be part of the growing pains of this kind of market. There was an initial coin offering based on the Ethereum blockchain that went bad and was, I think, hacked or something else. I read an article on Zero Hedge about it, and at the end of the day, I went, oh, it was a one-time event by a bunch of morons. Got it. Okay, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. To be honest, you're not, it became acute, and it's still acute in terms of transaction timing and whatnot. Transaction clearing times are slow on the Ethereum blockchain. They probably will be for a couple more days. This is, again, just growing pains. Every system is going to go through this. It will eventually come back stronger and more resilient because you're working out bugs, and that's the way I want you to look at it. I'm not telling you to get into the cryptocurrencies for any other reason at this point than as a backup savings account. If you want to do some of your banking in it and your transactions in it, you're more than welcome to. I'm not telling you not to. But, it's either to use it as a form of geographical way to move money geographically as a capital flight mechanism, or to store it and remember how to do it and get used to it and get, and build a relationship with an exchange and do all that stuff so that you know how to move money around within that system. Because it's very important that it's an important skill you're going to need to have going forward. Okay? So now let's get to the charts and let's talk about gold and silver and eventually Bitcoin. All right. So we're starting to get an encouraging setup in gold this week. And I'm very impressed with how well gold has held up this week by bouncing off of 1240 or something like that earlier in the week, 1242, and now is threatening to close this week above 1250. I would like, honestly, for gold to consolidate these gains and not really move much higher than this. If it moved up here, it would be good, but it would almost be too good because it would then set up another. It would then be nothing but a dead cat bounce. So I want to actually see some consolidation around 1250 coming into the end of the week and give us a close here. That gives us a high probability setup that will break this week's high, and then move up into the 1260 and 1270 range, and then allow this to become an interim bottom. And that way we have a continuing pattern of higher lows, not necessarily higher highs, but it gives us a high probability setup that, over the course of the next, going into July, that gold can make another run towards 1300. If not, and we get too much of a move up here between today and tomorrow, then it's going to raise the probability that that this rally runs out of steam and then wants to fall off again. So beginning to look like an encouraging setup, because every time you get one of these, long tail setups, you can see what happens. So you want that bottom bar and then another nice inside bar like this, or non-volatile bar, small range, right? Small difference between high and low, and then a close, preferably in the upper half of the bar, so that next week you set up a high probability setup of a reversal, and then you can get some very powerful moves off of that. If you get too strong a move off the bottom, while not clearing the halfway mark of the last down bar, you wind up with rallies that don't have enough energy to push to new highs. We had this setup here. So note the difference here. We get this huge down bar, and then the next week we get this big inside bar, but look at where we closed. We closed with a high probability setup that we would be able to push higher the next week. Got a daily close above this high, and then boom, we were off to the races for another $50 or $60, right? The closer the close is to the high of the previous bar, the higher the probability you'll be able to break that previous high, and that is what sets you up for the possibility that you can get a further rally. And in this case, it was a classic 2-bar reversal. All right. So gold is starting to. So I'd actually like to see this be a down bar that closes within the top half of this range, because the next week sets up a really nice probability. Maybe we'll put another $20 or $30 back on. Okay. Looking at silver, you've got the same thing, except that we're not anywhere close to being within this bar. And again, you're getting a high probability setup, but for next week, but it's still a very weak signal. So again, don't really want to see much of a move in silver above 1650 here in order to make a run towards 17 next week, and then because then that would be your first bar. This would almost be then a reversal signal, especially if you can get a close with above this high within 2 more bars. It gives you 2 more weeks to set up and set you up for a nice July, and it also defends the monthly and quarterly lows that we were worried about and all of that other stuff. So still, markets aren't good. I still don't think we have an interim bottom, but I'm looking for a close in this range this week on both gold and silver in order to set up a month-end close that would be bullish as opposed to bearish. Okay? And then Bitcoin. I almost put up the daily chart. If you look at the daily chart of Bitcoin, you can see much more. Obviously, there's more resolution, and you can see how important this low here may wind up becoming. But what I really wanted to point out to you is, other than this flash crash here, the same thing with this original. These are indicative of markets that just went liquid, right? But when the market is functioning normally, look at what you see. Boom. We've got these nice 2 well-defined lows in the 2450 to 2470 area, which, and then you've got a close here at the same level on a weekly basis, and you've got a high here. So this whole 2470 to 2520 area is becoming strong support. So a close this week above this level would be very strong and would set up a continued move the other way. Also note, there's no reversal signal here on the weekly chart. None. We never got a close below this low. Therefore, there was a potential for it, and had we closed this week here, I'd be telling you that Bitcoin's going to $1,000, or at least 1,200 or so. I'd say right around 1,200, 1,300. Guess what? Didn't happen. So what you have here is an incredibly strong market looking to set up to a new high above $3,000. That's what I think is going to happen. Okay, and looking at the daily chart is actually clearer than that, but I wanted to show it in very simple terms by just looking at these 3 bars here. Okay, so that's what I really have for this week. And the other thing about Ethereum is that the other thing is that there's also some bifurcation, or there's some split between Ethereum and Bitcoin at this point. Ethereum moved up so far, so fast that that market looks like it wants to find a bottom right here in the 300 to 325 area. We'll see. I'm looking for a daily close today, in the 320s or so. I'll have to look at the daily chart, but today's action is constructive, but there's still danger on that chart of a further wash down to, say, the 250 area. Not completely convinced of that. My gut tells me that it's going higher, but my gut's been wrong before, so better to use the charts than your guts. All right, so that's what I got. You guys take care. We'll talk to you in a couple of days. Keep your stick on the ice.